Howdy, this is Mackenzie Franklin from SideGame LLC here in Colorado Springs, Colorado. And today I'm joined by my co-host Dan for episode 23 of Corporate Cardboard. Dan, how are you today?
I'm very well, Mackenzie. Yeah, back after a long delay as usual, but yeah, happy to be back and catching up about what we've been playing.
Absolutely. And with that being said, let's jump right into what we've been playing, our first section of Corporate Cardboard. So Dan, what have you been playing?
Okay, yeah, I've been playing quite a lot since we last caught up, but a couple of ones that I wanted to talk about. I'm going to start with Akropolis, which is a game that's actually got a bit of buzz. I didn't realize how well this was doing in terms of the hype train, because when I picked it up, I didn't really realize. I just thought it looked cool. I'll give it a go. And then I realized there was actually a lot of people enjoying this one. And that really did align with my thoughts, because I think this game is pretty damn good. This is like definitely a gateway level tile placement game. You are very puzzly in its nature, as you're trying to draft these tiles, and then you're putting them on your little, personal little town. You've got different, I think they're called like provinces or something, or districts, I think they're called, sorry. And all these districts come in different colors. They all score in different ways. Like, for example, all the blues are the residential areas. You want to be trying to get all your blues connecting to each other, because your biggest cluster of those blues is going to score. Or you want like the reddy orangey ones, which are like your barracks or your turrets, which you want on the edge of your board. Or the yellow ones, which are your merchant buildings. They want to be isolated and not touching any other yellow buildings. So they all have these restrictions. But as you can see here from this picture, not only are you spanning out, you're also starting to build vertically. So when you start laying tiles on top of other tiles, you increase your multipliers when it comes to scoring. And the scoring is very much like King Domino, if you're familiar with that game, where you're going to multiply one thing with another thing. So in this one, all these different districts have these plazas of the matching colors. So you can see here, you've got these stars. That means for every star you've got on display of, say, the yellow, your yellow is going to score that many points depending on the layer they're on. So if you have, say, four yellow stars and you have a yellow building on the fourth layer, it'll be 4 times 4 for 16 points, whatever. And that's how the scoring is going to work. However, the drafting is quite interesting because it's quite restrictive. You can only we have basically a row of tiles. The first one's going to be free, but for everyone you skip over, you're going to have to pay a stone for, which is pretty standard fare. But the way you get the stone is by building on top of other tiles, because you can see some of these tiles are like the default grey color. And if you lay on top of those, every time you lay on top of one, you get a stone into your supply, which of course gives you freedom to draft the tiles you really want going forward. But this is like, it takes literally 25 minutes to play. Really good decisions, nice puzzle. And the ratio to gameplay you get for that 25 minutes is fantastic. And it's just one of those games that I could never really see myself turning down. Every single time it's been a hit. Never had a bad game of this one. Different things you can try. 1 minute you're going for residential buildings, and all of a sudden you realize, you know what, I'm not getting any stars here. All the stars are being drafted. So, I'm going to build on top of these residential buildings and go for something else to get bigger multipliers. And I love that kind of shifting gears of, when's the time to forget this and go for something else. And it's just a really pleasant gateway game that I highly recommend, actually. Are you aware of this one, Mackenzie? Are you aware of the buzz this one's been getting?
I've seen a lot of buzz from it, particularly in Gen Con. I think that's the biggest
Okay.
it's been available in the United States, at least. But yes, heard a lot of comparisons to Cascadia on the approachability level, the ease of teach. And honestly, with you just explaining it to me, I feel like I already know how to play. Like,
Yeah, you do.
my turns are going to be pretty quick. I really like how you mentioned here that choice between currency versus points. We see this in a lot of games, even heavier games like Heaven and Ale, and it's a great choice. It makes you consistently engage and puts you on that line of, am I willing to go buy with you spending as little money as possible to kind of maximize my points, or am I going to try to go for the biggest choices and just be able to use that money effectively? I really like this. That sounds great. I'm excited for the availability of this.
Yeah, I think it's gonna weather well. I think people are still going to be talking about this one in 3 to 5 years. I think it's that good.
Wow. Okay.
I do.
Any other final thoughts on Akropolis?
No, literally no negatives. Honestly, no negatives. I think it's that good. I think it's almost essential at this point.
You heard it here first. So it's new essential gateway game from Dan. That is Akropolis.
I think so.
Okay. So my game that I want to talk about is an abstract game that is also been getting a lot of buzz. It became readily available from delivering from the Kickstarter as well as from Gen Con. There were a lot of copies available at the Ivy Studios booth, and this is going to be Mythic Mischief. So Mythic Mischief is an abstract game where you are playing as these students at a spooky school, basically, a university. And it's your job to get the other mythics that are at the school with you caught by a tome keeper. It's basically that scene from Monsters Incorporated, the Monsters University movie, where they're having that competition trying to get this giant monster librarian to capture everybody. And that's exactly what's happening here. You have this huge tome keeper, this hulking beast that you're going to be moving around this map. And you don't actually control this character, but it has a set path and a set destination that it's going to. So your goal is to essentially manipulate the map as well as the enemy pieces into the path of the tome keeper so they get taken out. It's a race to 10 points, and every time you get one of your opponents caught, you'll get a point. But the thing that really makes this game stand out are the different abilities of the different factions. So there's a bunch of different factions of the game. You have witches and trolls, a variety of different options, but each of them only have really 4 things that make them different. Everybody has the same move action, the same distract action, but then they have different ways to manipulate each other. So for example, the ghosts will jump into the space of an enemy and then push them to an adjacent space. And so they are able to be a bit more aggressive with their movement. And if you have many next to each other, they can keep on scaring the same person. It's pretty cool. And while the other characters, like the trolls, they drag people. So if you're next to somebody, you can pull them with you to an adjacent space. So on top of that, they also gain special abilities during the second half of the game. It's separated into 2 courses. And in that second half, they'll unlock this after lunch special. And that'll give them some bonus effect in the form of usually tiles or extra tokens. And so the entire point of the game is to maximize your efficiency every turn by putting people in the direction of the tome keeper, but also keeping yourself at a safe distance. The thing that sets this game apart, though, on top of the special abilities and that planning, is the upgrade system. One of the ways that you increase your abilities during the game is by picking up tomes, the actual books from the library. When you grab a tome, you'll put it into this board in front of you. And as you can see, it's a recessed board that has space for dice as well as other slots. When you place the tome into that slot, it pushes all the dice to the right one. And that's going to give you more abilities and more actions that you can take of specific types. And it's permanent. So when you get these tomes, you're able to do even more and more. So the biggest decision point is where you put the tomes and how that's going to affect the entire rest of the game. And I think that decision point is a really nice one. My one criticism with this game is I think that the multiplayer can definitely suffer from a lot of AP. You are trying every turn to really maximize the routes, looking at all the different pieces. The board is pretty tight, but there's still a lot of options. And on your action phase, you get to use all of the different options available to you. So you are able to really make a huge plan, and every single movement matters. So you want to make sure it's perfect. But I think that the solo mode alleviates some of this because sorry about that. Yeah, the solo mode alleviates this because there is a bit of randomness introduced with the way that the AI can behave when it comes to the detention cards that are added. So I think I prefer this game and the solo mode. I do really enjoy it, but I do also really like the multiplayer. I think that one of the best ways to solve some of that downtime is there's a cleanup step that you can play, and to resolve that cleanup step and just have the other person go while you're resolving your cleanup step. So there's some good choices, good ways to balance this out, but overall a great experience, amazing production, and it's one that I do recommend, particularly if you like the abstract genre.
Okay, yeah, I didn't actually know anything about this one. So how does the what's it called, the tome keeper move then? Does it follow a set track, or does it get diverted by, if it sees someone, I see him, I'm going to change this direction and go for him, that kind of thing?
That's a great question. So each of the halves of the game have these cards, these before lunch and after lunch cards, and they will put out these destination markers onto the board. So you know where it's going for the first 3 destinations, but after it reaches that 3rd destination, you'll flip over the after lunch card, and that will show where the next 3 destinations are. So it's always going to take the shortest route towards that destination, and if it happens to hit any mythics along the way, you'll gain some extra points if they're opponents, but if they're not yours, then it's going to give you negative points if they're your own characters. So you're trying your best to make sure that it runs to the enemy and not yourself. It's the only randomness in the game, actually, that bit when you do flip over that after lunch card. So I would like to see more randomness in a game like this. And it got me thinking, what games do you think might be improved? Maybe helping out with the downtime or helping out with that AP if there was some randomness introduced. What do you think?
Oh, it's a difficult question, because I actually, when I play, like, in fact, abstract strategy games, pure abstracts, I struggle with. I generally do. I probably for that reason. I like some degree. I think we've discussed before. I like at least some kind of input randomness or something that will only, limit the steps you can take before the variables become too much to map out. Otherwise, that AP gets just absolutely off the charts. Which, even games that are in my collection that are pretty much so deterministic, I like some kind of hamstring to stop you from, looking too far ahead. Like, for example, something like Caesar. I've been playing a lot of Caesar recently. This is a pretty abstract game, but you only have 2 tokens to play with, so you're limited. Yep. So it's like, I like some kind of restriction or some kind of, as I said, like some kind of wall where you can only look so many steps ahead, other than being purely open. Everything is there, pure information. So it's a tough one because I don't tend to play games like this, but yeah, it's a good question, but I don't really have an example, I suppose.
I think I totally agree with you. And that's kind of how I feel in this game. You definitely fall in that trap of, ooh, if I move this wall, this could happen. And so you're analyzing it really to the T because it's going to be that set board. I think games like War Chest do a really good job of this, where you have that uncertainty of what your opponent has as well as what you have. So that's even tied into the game, that randomness, that push your luck. I really enjoy that. So I'd like to see something like that implemented in this, potentially in the multiplayer version. But that's Mythic Mischief. Really enjoying this one. And I think that if you like abstract games with a really awesome theme that really works, I think that this is a great one. So that's my first game I've been playing, Mythic Mischief. Dan, what do you have for me next?
Okay, yeah, I'm staying on the bit of the hype train, I suppose. This next game I'm talking about is Scout by Oink Games. I actually had this game on my shelf for a long, long time before it was nominated, and I just didn't get round to it. And I suppose the catalyst for me actually getting this to the table was because it started to blow up and people were thinking this game is great. And another one I absolutely agree with. This is, I suppose you call it a ladder climbing game. I'm not so familiar with the genre because I've not played many games of this type, but essentially it's almost like I suppose it's almost like poker or trying to beat the former thing, keep getting better and better hands. But the game, or the hand management in this game, is insane. It's so good, as you have these long cards, and these cards have 2 numbers, one on each side, basically. So you can flip them over and have a different number on each side. And with this hand of cards, they're just numbered from 1 to 10, and all you got to do on your turn is beat the number, or I forgot the terminology because this has like the silliest theme you'd imagine. It's purely just numbers, but they put some circus theme onto it that makes no sense. Yeah, like if someone puts a 5 down, you could beat it with a 6, you could beat it with a 7, 8, 9, and then to beat the 9, you might need like a 1 and a 2, and start getting straights, and then you can start getting like pairs or triples and so on. And you keep trying to do this, but the thing is, you could only ever play the cards in the order that they're in your hand. So as you're playing these cards, you're kind of creating new, better pairings as you're playing things from your hand. So you might have like a 1, 2, 6, 3. You play the 6, and then all of a sudden your 1, 2, and 3 are next to each other for the next turn to play the 1, 2, and 3 in a row. And that is just so much fun to try and map that out. All you do on your turn, it couldn't be simpler. You either play a show, which is like play a stronger suit, and you get all the cards that you've beaten as points, or you can scout, which is you basically weaken the hand of cards in the middle of the table by taking one of the cards and slotting it anywhere in your hand of cards, which again try and make better hands. But every time you do that, the person whose show that you've weakened gets a point. So sometimes you're putting great hands out there, people are chipping away at it, but you get a point for each time they do it. And this game, it couldn't be simpler, but it is just magic in a box. It is so much fun. Feels like another classic card game. Another one that I can strongly say this will be talked about in 10 years' time. People will still be playing it. I know I will. And the first time I played this one, I thought, this is good. And then all of a sudden it just clicks and you think, yeah, this is something special. And ever since I've had it, since I've been playing it, it's been keeps hitting the table. It is that good, and I think it has all the hallmarks for an instant classic. Have you played this one, Mackenzie? I'm not sure if you have or not. Okay.
Yes, I have played this one, and I agree with a lot of what you say. I think the scout mechanism itself is brilliant. I love the idea that you can flip it. I love that you can purposefully not pick up a point in order to set your hand up for a future combo. I think it's really awesome. I've played it at the 2 and the 4 player count and the 3, and I think I do prefer it at those higher player counts. Have you tried the 2 player?
I haven't. No, I've only played it at 3 so far.
So the 2-player is brutal because you only play 2 rounds, and one of the core mechanisms of the game is if it gets back to you, then whoever's had the best trick
Of
essentially, and it
course.
gets back to you, it ends
Yeah.
it. So
Yeah.
it doesn't really give you a lot of room to take any scout actions in a really low
Right.
player count game, because as soon as one person takes the scout action, the round is over. Basically, there's
Yeah.
really no wiggle room. So I think that the 3 and 4-player game is definitely where it shines. So make sure you're playing with that group. But that 2-player version, I think, is just a little bit too brutal, in my opinion.
Yeah, I can see that. But yeah, with that, I quite like the interaction actually in the say in a 3-player game, and I can see it
Mhm.
happening the same in a 4-player game where you think, I'm going to scout here. Next person, you better be able to beat it, otherwise we all lose. I love that. That's a really good bit of fun there. Putting all the onus and responsibility on the next person. It's I think it's a wonderful game. And what's your overall kind of rating of it? What do you think?
For me, it's a 6. It is a fun
Wow.
game. I'll still pull it out. I enjoy it. For me, the highs of the game are very similar. Whenever you do a big hand, it feels the same. Everyone's kind of leading up to this same, oh, I got a big suit, or I got this big run, and that's kind of it. Not a lot of variance between the games, but as you
Yeah.
play, it is still a fun game to play. I still enjoy it.
Yeah. I'm very impressed. I mean, I played it 5-6 times. Maybe it'll change by the time I played 15, 16 times. But right now I'm on a high. I'm riding it. I think it's fantastic.
I'm
really,
glad.
really impressed.
Yep, I think this is one of Oink's best games that they've produced in a while, for sure.
Yeah.
Excellent
Love it.
choice. Anything else on Scout?
No, just should have got it to the table sooner, I think.
When did you get it initially?
Oh, I don't even know. I mean, it must have been 9-10 months ago. It was way before the Spiel des Jahres nomination, that's for sure. Yeah.
Gotcha. Oh my goodness. Do you often get Oink games? Were you just interested in the box? Had you heard good things about it?
No, I actually heard about this one on I'm not sure if you're familiar with Board Game Barrage podcast. They're really good channel of good content creators. They really familiar and really really clued up on Oink games and Japanese games in general, and they always said this is like a real standout. And so I bought it on their recommendation, really, and then it started getting more kind of word of mouth and positive reception, and it went from there, really. But yeah, that's where I heard about it.
Gotcha. All right. The next, looks like we have a comment really quick. Ooh. Okay, this one is from John Franklin. You know that I do single deck backpacking game combo. Would this be a good game for that purpose? This is actually my dad. He's very into backpacking and lots of these large vacations where the best games that you can bring with are just a single deck of cards. And he'll create these combo decks where he'll use one deck of cards to play many games. So for example, all of the icons for coup, all the icons for every small pocket game you could think of, cockroach poker, etc. Do you think this would work on that as well? Something like that, shrinking it down.
It's difficult because they're reverse-sided, and I don't know.
I think it might be a little challenging because of the point tokens, but maybe you could make some of the cards point tokens. You got 52 cards. I don't know how many cards are in the actual deck, so I think that's a good question, but maybe one to take a look at. I'd look at the components list to find out.
Or I mean, to be honest, all the tokens, and there is a lot of them, they're just point markers. You could just write it down on a bit of paper. We had this discussion actually because when I played this with my friend, he said, "Oh, this is the perfect game that would take traveling with us." So it's funny you mention it actually, but I think it could be. I mean, and to be honest, the box is so small. Oink games are tiny, so you could even take it as it is. But
that's true.
Yeah, you could get rid of all the tokens. Just keep the cards, which are a relatively small deck of cards, and just again note your scoring down.
Great question, John. And then Emily, thank you for joining us this morning. It's all good. Thanks for joining Corporate Cardboard. So now we'll go ahead and go into the next game that I've been playing. This is Viscounts of the West Kingdom, in particular, the expansions for the game. If you're unfamiliar with Viscounts, it is the third of the trilogy of the West Kingdom saga from Garphill Games. This is Shem Phillips and S.J. McDonald. And the point of Viscounts is you are going to have this large Viscount character that you're moving around a map. You're going to be using this character to place out these different markers onto the board, whether it be buildings, or you can place some of your workers into a central castle. And you're also going to be collecting these manuscripts to gain different one-time effects and endgame scoring potential. So you have these three main different routes that you're going with, but the Gates of Gold expansion and Keeper of Keys have added some things to hopefully push the game a little bit higher in my ranks. My main criticism with the initial game was that you had to pick a single round and you just had to do it. And that really restricted the cards that you could add to your deck because, frankly, if that card didn't have the symbol you were looking for, there was no reason to even look at it. So it really minimized your playtime, and the game itself felt very boring, honestly. You weren't really doing a lot. I thought the solo mode was a little bit interesting because you had an AI opponent that was really well done, and you were always taking your turn, so you could really consistently crank through this puzzle. But I found the multiplayer very lacking because it was honestly just a very procedural game where you're just doing the thing, and whatever you decided to do well that game, that's what you were going to do. Now, Gates of Gold and the Keeper of Keys expansion, though, they add a couple of things. First off, in Gates of Gold, you're going to have these new cards, and these are called King's Orders. So these are cards that any time that you purchase a card, you can take a King's Order card instead. They go into your deck, and when you play them, there's actually a grid of cards in front of you, and when you play them, they'll slide on that grid. Whenever they drop off this grid, you are able to get one of these outsider cards, and this gives you new endgame scoring. I really like this because this is a new avenue of points, and it allows you to venture into different routes in the game, which I really appreciate. It also buffs a lot of the different other categories in the game. In the main game, the castle, which was the central area, was definitely the strongest way to get points. So they've actually buffed the manuscript here, so you actually start with some bonuses there, and the buildings by offering building bonuses. So I feel that it really rounds out the game while also offering these different scoring opportunities. So I really like this expansion right off the gate. It gives you a lot of flexibility as well as new endgame scoring targets. The other expansion is going to be Keeper of Keys, and this actually fixes one of my criticisms with the game while also not fixing another. So the way that this works is it adds a new section on the bottom of your board as well as these nice chunky player boards, and they are chess tiles. Chess tiles will go on the bottom of your board, and any time that you use a card and it matches one of these chests, so for example, this one here says if you put a cross there, it provides 3 of these bags instead, then you are now having all these options where some of the cards that you were going to ignore become great for you. Maybe you went to your building in the center, that castle area, and now all of a sudden you want to grab some hammers because you have a chest tile that says you could turn your hammers into something else, or you get some bonuses from having specific icons that you normally would have just ignored. I really appreciate this because not only is it another form of scoring, but it's also going to give you more flexibility and options with the different cards that you can take. So it solves my issue with that. However, it still definitely doubles down on the idea that in the game you really want to focus on just one thing because you are now collecting chess tiles to give you icons for the things that you're doing, but it does give you the option to take more cards for that. So there's some interesting choices here with that card, and I do think that it does a great job on that, but it also is going to put you down those paths a little bit further. The other thing that it does add, though, is the extra, an even bigger buff to the buildings, as if it didn't need it before. It gives you more ways to take these community buildings. They're these first come, first serve buildings that can give you extra bonuses. So I think that's really funny that they realized that the initial strategy of just storming the castle in the center was so strong that they needed to add all these additional things. And I think that it has actually done a pretty good job at pushing up those other options of scoring. So I appreciate what these 2 expansions do. And the expansions actually have increased the game a whole point in my rating. So it's gone from a 5 to a 6. So I do think that this is going to be one that I do keep and I will enjoy playing. I think I'll still probably prefer to play the solo mode as opposed to the competitive mode, but I do think that it has solved some of the issues and introduced some new interesting scoring methods. So have you played Viscounts of the West Kingdom? What do you think of this what do you think of the expansions, just with this quick overview?
I haven't played Viscounts at all, so it's quite difficult for me to, I suppose, have a point of reference because I don't know how it all connects together. But I mean, increasing it by a whole point, that's got to be something, I suppose. I mean, so I mean, it still sounds like you're relatively lukewarm on it in its entirety. I mean, is that the case?
I think the biggest thing about it is the fact that it is a very slow deck building game. And you are really doing the same thing, that same output every turn. There's no big variance in what you're trying to work on. And the rewards are generally going to be around the same. So I do think that the new options are interesting because it is going to want to push you out and actually explore some of the different systems of the game. But overall, I do think that Viscounts is the weakest of that entire trilogy, unfortunately. So if I were to recommend them, I still think Architects is the best one, with Paladins coming in second, and then Viscounts as the definitely bottom third. But I do think that the game is cool. I think that there's some good ideas here with the deck building, but seen as some of the most powerful actions are just really slow to resolve, it's not my favorite. It has to come down to that the core mechanism here where you're going to be moving these 3 cards in front of you. Every turn you slide them down, the one that falls off, if it has an X ability, it triggers, then you add a new one from your hand to the board. So you're able to use those icons that are in front of you. So those are my thoughts here. This did bring a question to my mind, though, in particular about expansions. Is this one in particular, it solved one problem, but not another? Have there been any expansions that you've played recently that have solved problems in games that you've experienced?
Well, as you said, I think I'm not actually played that many expansions, but I do love it when there's normally an interesting part of the game, but it gets neglected all the time because it's kind of suboptimal. But I love it when games kind of drag it up so it's even with everything else. But normally, as you say, it kind of comes with the sacrifice, as in A, it's going to increase the length of the game, so it's again that double-edged sword, or B, it just makes the game too bloated, and that could be like physical bloat, as in like just the stuff all over the table everywhere, and even like obstacles to get it to the table because you think, oh, I can't be asked to sort through everything, it's too much. Whereas before, I thought you might think, yeah, that rule was a little bit off, but at least it was hitting the table, and now it's not. I might have a better game, but there's just too much to sort through. But I suppose the low-hanging fruit is to say it makes the game better, but the sacrifice for that is that it's going to take longer, and that's generally 90% of the time the truth.
I do think that one of the games that has done this the best is actually Dune Imperium. I think that Dune Imperium's expansion edition has actually sped up the gameplay, and they do this by replacing some of the actions. So they basically added boards that cover up old boards. They have more synergy with the different spaces and more venues to gain points. And so I think that's a really great balance. Not only is it giving you more options in the card, but also that switch. So it strengthens some of those other tracks and actions. And I think that's like the prime expansion to really be like, ooh, this is what we should be doing to expand our game.
Agreed. I think that would be a bigger thing going forward, actually. People, instead of bloating games with expansions, they're going to be actually stripping stuff out with expansions. I think that would be a trend, actually.
I'm all for it. So that brings us to our next game. Dan, what do you have?
Okay, yeah, so the final game I'm talking about is an oldie, but a goodie. This is Antike II. So this is a Mac Gertz game, who's known for his rondels, games such as Navigador, Hamburgum, and not a rondel game, but his most popular game, Condottiere, of course. Antike II is definitely almost like his version of a war game. It is a lot more confrontational. You are building troops on the map. You're gathering resources, which is kind of the hybrid between the Euro side of the game and the war side of the game. And it really is a mix of the two. It's 50-50, I'd say. But I think this game is really fascinating, and I almost say this about most Mac Gertz games, where how he manages to take a pretty involved design, lots going on here, but just boil it down into just a few rondel spaces. And if there's ever a game here that cuts out any unnecessary rule, that's this one. I mean, for a war game, resource management, game of conquest, this has so much going on with such simple actions. So all you're doing is essentially you're spawning troops, traveling around, of course. Then as you go into these regions and you have presence in them by trading in resources to establish like a settlement, you can produce the resources, and for every type of resource you have or controlling of that type, you get the resources back, and you're going to use them to not only build new establishments or new cities, but you can also build temples. Of course, you're establishing troops, which are just your foot soldiers or your boats, and you can sail around and kill each other. The way the combat works is very deterministic, way more deterministic than most war games, because it's a simple run into each other, one for one, you get eliminated. So again, very deterministic. There's no dice, there's no no randomness at all, I suppose. But there are some little things about this game that kind of take it away from that ultra dryness. It's a pretty dry game, but there are things that you can do, such as investing in these technologies, which make you kind of travel faster, or they can increase your defenses, or they can make you trade resources with yourself, like for a 2-to-1 ratio or something like that. So it gives you more flexibility to build what you want to do. But I think the thing I liked most about this game, which is normally the case with most Mac Gertz games, is the way that he uses scoring. So normally he uses that kind of tailor your strategy to what you're collecting thing, like Concordia, collect this type of card and then do this type of strategy. With this one, you have these public objectives out there. And basically, it might say, have 5 cities on the board, and then if you do that, you take a card, and that will get you one of your, say, 10 points, whatever you need to win the game. One might say, establish 3 temples, and you want to be doing that, because not only does temples good because they get you points, but also they increase your ability to harvest resources and to spawn troops onto the board. There's an objective that lets you gain points by destroying other people's temples or by controlling regions in the sea. So there's all these different things, or even I didn't mention getting technology. So the first person to get a certain technology gets one of these reward tokens, but everybody else following it gets it at a cheaper rate. So it might cost me, you say, 9 gold to get this great technology. I'll get the victory point, but everybody else can copy me. They'll only have to pay 3 gold. But they don't get the objective cards. So that's a really good little twist on the game. So yeah, this is very well put together. Again, no fat on the game whatsoever. Very streamlined. If you want a crunchy Euro war game hybrid, this is a great option. And it's one of the games that I'm not always in the mood to play. In fact, I'm quite seldom in the mood to play. But if I do have that itch to play a game like this, something more confrontational, this is definitely more up my alley than a lot of the dice chuckers or things like that, because it's just a bit more strategic, and you're using your troops not only just to smash into people, but you can kind of place them in a more of a Cold War style thing. It's deterrence, because it's going to be costly for people to collide, because they're going to obviously waste a lot of troops. But the incentive is still there, because the actual tiebreakers go in favor of the attacker. So if, it makes defending more difficult than attacking, which encourages people not to turtle, I suppose. But yeah, I liked it. I like it a lot. It's pretty much what you'd expect if Matt Kurtz was to make a war game, and it works. I think, again, it's not going to be for everybody because it's not pure Euro, but if you want that mix, that slightly war game nature, a bit more conflict, then this is a really good option.
I really like the objective-based combat, chasing down these mini objectives. I think that's going to be really helpful for just propelling the arc of the game in general. It's one of the things that I really like in things like Hallertau or Wonderland's War, with a purpose for your plays. So I really appreciate that.
Yeah, it's so simple. But yeah, that tension, and these objective cards are limited as well, so you want to make sure you do them quicker than other people, because there's not enough for everybody. And it just works. It just works, and I'd recommend it if you want a game like this that's not so dice driven.
Sounds good. Excellent.
Good.
So that is Antike II. Was there an Antike 1?
Yeah, there was. Yeah, I think there's some very minor changes between the two. I don't know what they are exactly.
Did you play the one with miniatures or without miniatures, or is that just like an extra thing?
Yeah, they're just normal. The exact same wooden boats from Concordia and just normal meeples. Yeah,
excellent.
Which I like.
Perfect. Yeah, I'm actually a big fan of wooden components over big minis. Actually, sometimes the minis are pretty dang good, but I really do like the wooden aesthetic. Now, that being said, this goes to my last game, which is actually full of minis and upgraded components and all sorts of things. This is a new take on the Frankenstein, creating these terrible experiments genre. This is My Father's Work from Renegade Games. Now, this is a huge story-based game, worker placement game, that has you continuing on the legacy of your family. And you're going to be playing 3 generations of this game. And so what you create in one generation, some of that is going to move on to the next, but most of your things are going to completely disappear from generation to generation. So your buildings stay, but all of your ingredients and everything else that you've collected is gone. It's just been too long, so it's not going to stay through this. However, your family is going to do their best to leave a gigantic legacy for you. Now, this game is a single-shot game. I was under the impression initially that it was some form of legacy game, but that is not the case. It is a single session, and you pick a scenario. And the scenario is going to have a book that you're going to be placing into the center of the table, and it's going to be a worker placement game. You have 5 different characters or 6 different characters with different bases, and those bases determine where they can go on the map. If they've got a round base, they can enter the city here. If they've got a square base, they can work on your own personal player board. And then if they have a hexagon, a pentagon, that is you. That is your character, and you can send your character to wherever you want. And your character is so strong that some spaces can only be used by your character. Some spaces will give you double the resources if you send them to the town areas. So it's really critical that you use your personal character super wisely. So as you can see, this book here is spiral bound. So as you play the game, there's going to be a story that propels what is happening, and it's actually going to change the game, and you're going to flip the pages of the book and reveal new worker spots based on the decisions that the players have made. So generally, there's going to be one big overarching theme that determines which page that you start with. And then certain events and different actions that players take will cause special things to happen that may make you change to different pages. Generally, each generation, you're going to change from place to place. And during these generations, the core thing that you're going to be doing is collecting resources for contract fulfillment. So the core mechanism of the game is you're going to be trying to complete these different cards. So you have a variety of these cards in your hand that have different resources they require, whether it be knowledge or things like animals and gears, and sometimes completing lower level objectives. And so you're trying your best to complete as many as possible in order to gain not only victory points, but also more and more resources to complete more contracts. The card draw rate in this game is pretty crazy. You're constantly drawing stuff. And so you're always having a lot of options. So you're able to pick and choose and chain the different cards in your hand to create the different things that you're looking for. But at its heart, really, you're sending characters out to collect resources, and then you're using those resources to fulfill these contracts. And that's kind of what you're doing the whole game. And so you're racing to get the high value spots on the board. And then the biggest thing that you're trying to do is create these permanent resources that actually last through generations. Now, on your board, you're going to have this journal section up here. And by paying a certain amount of these cubes, you can permanently increase your ability to always get a free type of that cube. For example, if I spend a blue cube here, in all future actions, I'll get 1 discount. And if you increase that further, you'll also get generational bonuses that will give you special abilities. For example, extra money at the start of each round. One of the tracks itself even gives you negatives, but the cubes that it provides are wilds. And so you have this mixed choice of what do I actually want to invest in? What sort of these bonuses do I want to have? And based on the cards that you're drawing, you can choose the path on that track of the different points that you want to achieve. So there's a lot going on when it comes to picking up these upgrades, but really, you're collecting resources, trading them for points. But here is where we introduce the interesting, the big aspect, the big draw of the game is the entire game is app driven. And so this app is going to have a huge presence on the game. You are going to choose a scenario and it'll populate these event tokens on the board. And when somebody does a certain condition, it'll trigger one of these effects. And the effects are going to drastically change the game. Now, there's 2 things that I want to really make sure that you know if you're looking or this game seems interesting to you, is that the app really adds a lot of time to the game. So there's a whole bunch of reading that you're going to have to do when you play the game. You've got these big walls of text, and it's hit or miss when it comes to narration. Sometimes it does have narration, sometimes it doesn't on the different passages. And so I found myself being the person who was reading and reading a lot. I was sitting there going through the whole game, and it really would stop the game in its tracks once you had to read a passage. So the worker placement was fine, moving, doing stuff, but the game really did come to a halt when it came to these events. And the other thing is these events can be pretty swingy. Like you might get a position where something happens. There's a spot on the board. You change I'll give one example from my game where a spot entered the board where if you didn't take this spot's action, you would receive a huge penalty. And so I forwent doing one in action in order to take this spot because I was like, okay, obviously I need to do this now, just get it out of the way because I went last of the turn order, so I won't have a chance to do it later. So make sure I take the spot, use my leader, excellent. And the leader is like your most important piece to do so. And I was the only one who took this. There was a random event that occurred later in like the next round. So after we got all our people back, that said that if this condition happened, then that space that I had spent my time and my most powerful action on would disappear. And I was just like, wow. So I just wasted my entire last round on my most powerful action and ended up losing the game by about 6 points. And so I think that if I had not done that, if I had known that, or if the app had some inclination that this could have occurred, then this wouldn't have been the case. But I'm pretty sure that was the key moment in that game that cost me what I was doing. And it's really frustrating because I had played to the theme, doing this thing for this prevention with no indication that an event like that could have happened. And this is all app driven. This is all something that could have occurred from the event. And so that is kind of unfortunate to me, where this is where the story got in the way for me. It increased that game length. It drove that randomness. Maybe there was some foreshadowing that I missed, but I was reading most of it. I was pretty pretty sure what I was planning for, but I guess there was maybe some way that I could have planned for it, but unfortunately not. Have you played any games recently where the story really got in the way of the game for you?
I don't play any story games at all, so so no, really. But yeah, that sounds very frustrating. Does it ever kind of justify itself, saying, "Oh, you could have known because of this," or did it explain why?
So
I guess not.
in the story, it didn't give any foreshadowing as to it would happen, but it gave a reason as to why it would happen. So essentially,
Right.
there was like a town hall that was going on. So the story was like, okay, there's this town hall, and you need to appease the town hall, or they're going to burn you, basically. And so I was like, okay, well, obviously, I don't want to be burnt because that seems terrible. And it gave you the consequence. It said that you would lose a certain amount of victory points, and something terrible would happen. So I was like, okay, obviously, I don't want this to happen, so I'll go do that. In the next phase, though, in the next round, they said, oh, we're actually going to create a experiment that is going to destroy town hall. And I was like, oh, of course you are, after I had wasted my action. And so that actually ended up happening, was the town hall got destroyed. And so anybody that didn't go there didn't receive the negative consequences either. So it was pretty frustrating because it was just out of nowhere, like, oh, actually we can do this thing. I will say, though, that the story moment where they talked about destroying town hall was the greatest writing in the entire app. So I thought that was great. However, I think actually the writing in general is kind of on the weak side. Story was not very engrossing, unfortunately, and it wasn't something that I was really invested in. I felt like at certain points when I was reading, I was just like, let's just get through this. Come on, this is not super interesting or exciting to me. So, but that specific moment was great. I really enjoyed that.
And is there, like you said, scenario based, but is every time you play a scenario going to be vastly different because there's so many different variable things within that app? I assume that's what it is.
I imagine it will be different. I think some of the mechanisms will be shared if you play the same scenarios, but I'll be honest, I'm not really looking to return to this one. I don't really want to find out.
Fair enough. Yeah,
not that enticed by the experience. Very long game that is very simple at its core, with just simple contract fulfillment with extremely random swingy events. Not my cup of tea. Not really interested in it. If I want to play a super long replacement game, I'll play Anachrony, and Anachrony is shorter than this game. Why would I choose to play this game?
Yeah, really cool theme. Love the artwork. I like this idea of the whole like 3 generation thing. Like what's it called? What's the TV show? American Horror Story. That kind of same.
Yeah.
You know, I like that idea, but maybe this isn't the one to deliver that in board game form.
I would agree. So I saw this at the store the other day, and I had been talking about it for like my anticipated Gen Con stuff. And I was like, ooh, it's right here. Like I could purchase it immediately, but I knew that a friend had a copy. So we played his copy, and I'm pretty happy that I didn't end up getting it. So unfortunately.
This is doing really well as well, isn't it? This is like ratings wise, people are loving this game. Yeah,
I was really surprised, and I was looking to see if it was just me, so I went and looked at some of the ratings, and a lot of people were under that same impression, like, oh, it's really long for what it is, it's really simple at its core mechanisms, the story is not super strong, and it just drags. And I would have to agree with that. So not my favorite. I'd actually rather play the revised version of Abomination than I would want to play My Father's Work.
Okay. Yeah.
That's my recommendation. Emily has a comment here quickly, thinking that I was going to say Carnival Zombie. I did not get Carnival Zombie. I'll be honest, I've only seen it in passing. I know what the cover looks like. Don't know a lot about the game. So hopefully the reviews are good. And if it is good enough, I will end up checking it out most likely. And can't buy any more story games. Too many in the collection. Luckily, this is not a campaign story game. This is a one-shot. So if it is something that looks enticing to you, this might be an option. But totally understand that. Etherfields just arrived yesterday. So I have that set up on the table. I'm like a dream and a half in right now. And oh my gosh, I can't wait to talk about that one next time we do this. It's so good. Oh my gosh. So that is My Father's Work. Anything else on this one, Dan?
No, this one definitely intrigued me when it was announced, and I thought it was going to be good, but I'm glad I can pass on it.
If you want to give it a try, I see that it might be something interesting, but for me, it's a lot of reused mechanisms like surrounding a simple contract fulfillment game. So not something that I'm super excited to go back to.
Cool. Well, there we go.
But you know what I am excited about are our crowdfunding picks for this week. So first up, Dan, what do you got for our crowdfunding pick?
I have got one actually. Yeah, I don't think it's live yet. Yeah. It's an old one. It's not a new game, but it's a reprinting of an old Kramer and Kiesling game that has been out of print for a long, long time. This is a game called Pueblo. It's basically a kind of it's an abstract strategy, but like a spatial puzzle game where you have these kind of plastic interlocking shapes where if you put two of them together, they basically make a perfect cube, but they can fit together in different ways. And you're basically trying to manipulate this big shape because there's like this inspector piece going around, and whether it's kind of face on with the structure, I suppose, and it can see your color, then you score negative points. And it's like a golf style game where you want to keep hiding your pieces so that you don't keep gaining points. That's basically what the game is. It's supposed to be good. It's supposed to be a classic. Never managed to get a physical copy because it is so hard to come by. But Mojito Games are reprinting it in a nice little package there. So I'll probably back this one if the price is right, which we So quite excited to say this one's coming back, and maybe a whole new generation can play Pueblo. Any interest in this one, Mackenzie?
This looks great. Like, actually, this looks super fun, like super interesting, really easy to play. Is this similar to, what game is it? I think it's called Blockus 3D, where you're trying to, your perspective is different than the other's perspectives, where it depends on where you're sitting, what actually the outlook is.
In theory, yes. I mean, but you're not worried about your perspective. You are worried about this little chap here. See the little native meeple thing there?
The eagle?
Yeah, so that guy there,
okay.
or the eagle, I suppose, yeah. He is going to move a number of spaces, and depending where he sees is what he's going to see. So it's not like your perspective, it's this moving piece, and you can move
interesting.
1 to 4 spaces, I think it is.
Yeah.
So if you know that you're not in a good position, you might want to move it 1, so you've got enough time to cover up when it gets back to your turn, you know? That's basically the whole game.
I like it. Okay, that's cool. I like that you have this point of reference, so you're not having to go across the different areas. Oh, maybe that would be kind of annoying, though, because you would need to see that perspective from the eagle, right? And it might be different.
Yeah. I think as well, there's another dimension to it. When he lands on the corners, I believe,
oh gosh,
he looks down like a bird's eye view, but in one of these quarters. I don't know all the rules exactly, but something tells me that's the rule where, not only is he looking from his point of view, he also looks from a bird's eye point of view as well every now and then. So could be cool.
All right, excellent.
That's it. That's my pick. What's your pick, Mackenzie?
So I don't actually have a pick this week. So I originally had a pick for Dead Reckoning, Letters of Marque, but that campaign is actually over. So I actually don't have a pick this week. I'm currently not backing anything.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, so this was actually going to be a shorter section than usual, which is okay with me. I like this idea of not backing a game right now. It feels good, but I imagine things are going to pick up. I know that Ascension Tactics, the new Kickstarter for that, is going to be coming out soon, and I am ecstatic. So lots of these upcoming Kickstarter announcements at Gen Con, so there are definitely going to be some ones that I'm going to be interested in the near future.
Okay.
But yeah,
cool.
I do, though, have something for our next section, whereas you don't, it looks like. And this is our news section. So the news section here today is very simple, and it is just a not even mechanisms, nothing. It's just the name of a system. And this is a new Fantasy Flight game from me. This is the new Star Wars deck building game. And this comes at... I have 2 big things that I want to talk about. The first thing I want to talk about is the missed opportunity. I was under the impression that we were going to get some incredible new LCG from Fantasy Flight Games that was in the line of something like Arkham Horror or Marvel Champions, 2 of my favorite games. And unfortunately, that is not what we got. We got a Star Wars deck building game, which is supposed to be a dueling game where it's going to be a hero versus a villain, taking each other out. Honestly, something that I'm not super excited for. Dueling games are hard to get into. They need to be innovative and interesting in order to really stand out. And I think that I think it's a missed opportunity. I really do. I think that Star Wars is a perfect universe for an adventure style cooperative game. And I think that they really missed it on this one. So that's one thing I'm really disappointed about. Thoughts? Are you super interested in Star Wars? I don't think you are. Is that right?
No, I never minded the old original, 3 films. I did quite like them, but I was never mad about Star Wars like I was like, say, Lord of the Rings and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Always much more fantasy than sci-fi. But yeah, I mean, for me, deck building in general, something that's never massively inspired me. I know it's extremely popular. And I'm kind of like thinking, is there that much room to explore? I could be wrong, because I mean, people would come out with more innovative things, but is this going to be some kind of Hero Realms, Star Realms style game. Maybe, I don't know. And when I see Star Wars now, I mean, maybe because I'm not so invested in it, it just seems like it's a little bit saturated in terms of sticking this on every single product you can think of, and it almost feels a bit like almost like tacky now. You know what I mean? It's like just stick the Star Wars logo on it, shovel it out, and consume. It's like, meh, not for me.
Gotcha.
But hey.
I think I'm under that same impression with you. Is I want them to have something cool and innovative with the deck building. And I think that's the biggest thing. And so my question to you is, what sort of innovations do you think they could make with a deck building dueling game that's not just more Star Realms, that's not just more Hero Realms? I'm super excited to think.
Yeah, I really don't know. And I'm sure whatever that answer is, it'll be like, yeah, of course. I don't know. Maybe it's another hybrid of mixing deck building with another style of game. You know, the last kind of innovation for deck building seems to be when it was mixed with, you know, the worker placement, the hybrid. You know, the Arnak and June. They were like the last biggest deck builders. Since then, it seems like after that initial big hit of deck builders, it seems like everything is just the same, just a different skin, slightly. But I don't know. Maybe there is still room to explore. I don't know, because I mean, there's utterly infinite room with cards, I suppose. But it's difficult. It's really difficult, and I suppose it's just surprising that there's not been a deck building game yet for Star Wars, I suppose.
I'm curious if they'll go the route like Heroes of Tennefer, where you have a certain amount of cards that you flip every turn, and that's how much damage potential you can do. And so the choice is in the amount of cards you're revealing and the amount of times you do it. Or if it's going to be a very standard, I do this thing to produce currencies to buy stuff. So I hope that it leans more into something innovative and you're collecting cards in a different way, as opposed to something more basic.
I tell you, here's the idea, Mackenzie. Here's the idea. Deck deconstruction, massively underutilized mechanism that's not been seen yet. Only a few games use deck deconstruction, where you start with a big deck and you thin it down as you go. What if the Rebel players are building a deck and the Empire players are deconstructing a deck?
There it is. Amazing. Now they just got to do it right here. You called it.
Just do it. Just do
Amazing.
it. There we go. That's what this yeah. That's the next thing.
Please be good.
Deck building.
Oh, that'd be really interesting. Asymmetric deck building. Like, are they putting their cards into the Rebel deck? Is that the idea?
Oh, maybe that's even better. Yeah. So maybe the maybe they're diluting the Rebel deck, padding it out with crap, and then maybe you're taking with the Rebel players, you're taking the good cards out of the Empire and adding them to your deck. So some kind of back and forth between the cards, where one thing is good, you're taking resources or leeching off each other, kind of thing.
I don't
know, something like that.
I like it. You're smuggling the goods out. You're defeating things. You're commandeering things. You're getting people to dissent. Okay, join us next stream where Dan and I design Star Wars, the deck building game, Rebel versus.
Just give you that license money. Yeah, all
That's
in.
right.
All in.
Dan and I both have a Patreon, so go ahead and check that out. That's right.
Yep. I will
and
consult
we'll get right
for
on
a very high price.
Thank you very much. Excellent. And if you're watching this Asmodee, we got you. We do have a couple of questions here in the comments. Emily says, what is the cup picture? This is actually the Royal Gorge. And this is a train that's in Colorado Springs. You get on and it takes you through this huge gorge. It's very pretty. I went there for my birthday a couple years ago. Shout out to my wife. Thank you, Ariel. Awesome.
Very nice.
Super good stuff. And then Barker has a question of what dueling games do you actually recommend? They always feel extra tense. So Dan, I'm going to let you start off this question. What dueling games do you like?
I absolutely agree, Barker. They are a bit too confrontational for me generally. But what dueling games do I like?
I'll go first. I've got a couple.
Okay, you go first. I'll have a think.
So if you're looking for a like TCG style dueling game, I really like Sorcerer. I think that game is really fun. I'm waiting for the Kickstarter to drop, but I got to play a friend's copy and was really impressed with it. And for a miniatures head-to-head fighting dueling game, I really like Unmatched for something that's very quick and easy to pick up and has some great choices with how you're going to be working around your attrition and the different card combos you're playing and when's the right time to play stuff. And I also really like Super Fantasy Brawl for that, for this objective objective-based combat. So it's not just about fighting, but balancing these different conditions at any given time. And then for something a bit more abstract, I really like Air, Land, and Sea and Hanami Koji for dueling games. They're more of lane battling games where you are trying to collect cards on the different sides. And I think that they're some of the best in their genre. So I really like both of those for something that's not necessarily just beat the crap out of another person.
Yeah, I completely. I was going to say Air, Land, and Sea would be my go-to of that start. Again, it's kind of adjacent. It's not so much smashing on each other. It's a bit more thinky, a bit more, a bit of intrigue, a bit of misdirection, that kind of thing. Less punching each other in the face and trying to kill each other. But really good game. Air, Land, and Sea is top notch.
Yep. Perfect. So with those out of the way, we're going to move into our next section. This is card and component appreciation. This is where we talk about some cards or some things that we found and we just really want to gush about them. Dan, what is your card for this week?
Yeah, so my card this week is a card. It's from a game called Condottiere, which is an older kind of area majority game that uses hand management and card play. And the card specifically I'm talking about is the Scarecrow card, which is essentially a bluffing card, which allows you to retreat your troops, essentially. Because this game is it's a bit of a war of attrition, if anything, because you have a hand of cards and you very rarely get to replenish that hand of cards. So you have to pick your battles very carefully and make sure that they last you for multiple fights. And one of the best ways to do that is through the use of these Scarecrow cards, because they don't do anything apart from letting you draw or take back cards that you've previously played. And you can use this for a ton of different reasons. Like maybe you want to go for a fight, then all of a sudden someone dedicates more troops than you. You think, you know what, this is too much for me. I'm going to bring my troops back, ready for another fight, and let this one go. But you can also use it to almost like lure people out. Like if you know that there's someone that really wants to get in this fight, and he doesn't think anybody else is willing to get into that fight, and they probably think they can get it for nice and cheap, you can put one of your strong cards down, they put one of theirs down, knowing they have to try and beat you, and then you can use it to bring it back into your hand and say, you know what, see you later, you've wasted your good card, you could have used a worse card. There's lots of different ways you can use it, but it's just, I love this one. When I have a handful of these Scarecrow cards, I love it. It's just it kind of raises the tension a bit, and I think it's a brilliant idea. And to be honest, all the cards in this game are great, and I could have chose any of them. It's that good. Have you played
This looks awesome. I have not played this.
Mackenzie, you need to get this game. This game
really?
is unbelievable. Yeah, you will love this game.
Ooh, what makes you say that?
Oh, just the number one. I know you love card play in general.
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited. Okay.
Mixed with area control. To be honest, when it comes to like 4 or 5 players, this game is so good. I mean, the level of like trickery that you can use these cards to play with. I mean, there's only a few of them, but the way they interact is just mind blowing. You know, you have your standard troops, which are like your strength, numbered 1 to 10, I think it is. But then you've got cards that will say eliminate all the highest cards on the board. So, and then all the highest ones would disappear, whether they're yours or other people's. And then, obviously, depending on the order you play, you might think, oh, now I'll bring the big guns out. But then someone might play another Windsor card and so on. And just the way you have to see it for yourself. I mean, it's relatively affordable, small box, area majority with hand management, and it has that. Again, you very rarely get to replenish your hand of cards, so they need to last you loads. So you could actually spend loads of them in a battle, have like 1 or 2 cards left in your hand, and everybody else has got a full supply of cards. And so you really need to know when to spend them. And every single card placement feels important in this game, and I love it. It's so good.
You're okay. This is going to be on the next shipment. This is your recommendation. This is on you. If it's bad,
this is a strong recommend. I think you'll like it. I mean, it is area majority. I don't know if you like area majority that much.
I do. Sure. I do. It's fun.
Okay, you will like it then.
I'm not really opposed to any mechanisms. I don't think.
No, you will like this one. I promise.
Okay. Ooh, I'm excited. Awesome.
I hope you do. Now.
So that is the Scarecrow in, how do you pronounce it? Condottiere?
I think it's Condottiere or Condottiere. I'm not sure. I call it Condottiere.
Condottiere. Awesome. So my game is a game that I've been playing a lot with Ariana, and this is for Aeon's End. So Aeon's End is a cooperative deck building game where you are going to be defeating some bosses by using your different mages to cast off a variety of spells. And so these spells are going to deal damage to a variety of minions as well as to the giant bosses. You need to kill the boss before they kill you. Generally, if one character dies, it's not the end of the game. You're going to lose a lot of resources, which really stinks, and the game is going to get harder, but generally you're able to still win even if one person is defeated. Now, the card that I want to show you today, I think is absolutely absurd, and just from its name, I think you can probably figure out what this card is going to do. It is called Inescapable Torment. So this card, let me go ahead and pull it up into a tab here. Let me see if I can drop it in. 1 second. So this card here essentially says that you're going to lose this game. This game is done for you. You're going to die, and just be ready. That's happening. Somebody is getting killed on the next turn. And I'm having trouble pulling it up. I'm just going to go ahead and read it then. I have it here. 1 second. Let me see if I can put it in here. Let's go with, I'm just going to put it. It's happening. Okay. So this card is a power card, which means that it gets a couple of tokens put onto it at the start of each round. And after those cards have been put onto it, every villain phase, they'll remove one of those tokens. So you know it's coming. And most of these cards are going to have ways that you actually are able to get rid of them. But this does not have that on it. It just has power 2. So that means in 2 turns, the player with the highest life suffers damage equal to their life. They're dead. They're going to die. There's nothing you can do about it, and it's going to happen. So I really appreciate this, that this has a huge impact on the game when it exists. You know that it's happening, so it's something that you can prepare for. It's something that you can anticipate, and you have at least a full cycle of action cards before it actually takes into effect, which is really interesting to me. You have some choices where you can just stop where you're at with all of your engine building and your deck building and just start going straight for the boss. This might be the turning point that you need, or it could be the moment where you say, okay, seeing as I'm going to die, I'm going to start funneling all of my energy and power into you. Maybe you have some support role that you can take. I think this is a really great choice for multiple venues here. And the idea that it comes out pretty late in the game and you have that time to prepare for it, it doesn't have any immediate impact when it's played. I think there's some great balancing here with this card in general. So I think it's a really neat concept of having this guaranteed death in the game, but having the time to prepare for it and be ready for it. So that is the Inescapable Torment for Aeon's End. Have you played this one, Dan?
No, I've not. I actually didn't know anything about it until I saw it was ranked ridiculously high on Board Game Geek, Aeon's End. And I was like, what is this game? I don't know. And then since then, all I've had is people talking about it. This is the cooperative deck builder, yeah?
Yes, cooperative deck builder with its core mechanism being that boss battling and that you don't shuffle your deck. Those are the biggest things here. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, I mean, I wasn't sure that it was going to be, when I thought you were explaining it, I didn't know it was going to be forced towards the end of the game. I thought it could have come out like first round or something.
So there's a great system in Aeon's End where the enemy deck is tiered. So based on the number of players you're playing, you have like the basic cards and the level 2, then level 3. So this is a level 3 card, so it is going to show up at the end. And I really like that it happens. You know it's going to happen, and it's the equivalent of another terrible thing happening. So I think it's really cool. I think it's really well done.
Cool. And how much longer can the game go on after that happening? Could it go on for another hour?
So if a character dies, they destroy one of their portals, which allows them to cast their spells. And then they also, anytime they would take damage, they take twice as much damage, but it goes to like the city that you're protecting instead. So because it represents that you no longer have the ability to prevent the enemies from attacking the city, and the city is the main thing you're trying to protect. Right. So it makes it more difficult for all the players. Yes, you're still playing, which is cool. You still get to participate. So I think that's a really cool approach to a game like this. And the fact that death mechanism is built in already. So I think that makes sense. No, Parker, I agree. It is hella brutal, but I think it's a really thematic and really cool. Cool. Sweet.
Good choice.
All right. And then Emily has one more thing that she wants to add here with the cards that she's really appreciating. And those are from Obsession. So Obsession cards are so good since you've got the family members, but then super powerful friends are great to use. But then you want to get rid of them by the end or they'll give you negative points. So if you're not familiar with Obsession, this is a game where you're playing as these Victorian households. And it's up to you in order to use them as best you can to visit all of the different rooms of your giant mansion. Every time you visit a new room, you'll flip the tile and you'll get some bonus. And each room has the ability to bring new people into it. So, for example, if you go to the tea room, you might be able to bring a pair of people. If you go out to the sporting green, or the, what do you call it, the bowler's green, you might be able to bring a whole bunch of people. And the more that you play the characters, the more benefits that you get from them. So you're always trying to manage the amount of cards that you can play, as well as the different workers that you're sending to the different areas. So I think that's a really good suggestion here, Emily, with Obsession as a whole. I think this is a pretty fun game.
Cool.
Sweet. And that's our section on card and component appreciation. What's next, Dan? I forget.
I don't know. I don't have the little roster in front of me.
Okay, next up is This or That. This one here is our question that we give out to the audience. So last week I put up our corporate cardboard question, and last week our question was This or That, card games or dice games? And Dan, which side of the fence did we both end up landing on last week?
I'm pretty sure we both went for card, simply because of the potential is so much more. No dislike on dice games at all. There's some really awesome dice games out there. But cards, I mean, infinite potential on what you could do with cards, I suppose. I'm sure there is a lot of potential you could do with dice, but ultimately, generally, you're expecting some kind of lighter random game, I suppose, as a to pass judgment on it. But yeah, but yeah, card games. Some of the best games ever are card games.
And I think that some of the best dice games incorporate cards in those games as well. So it's a healthy mix. And I do like both, but I definitely, if I had to pick just one, just from this question, it would definitely be card games. So as I said before, we did ask our audience what they thought of this question. So I'll pull up the results here. And we had a resounding 70% for deal me some cards, as opposed to the 30% of toss me a handful of dice. So it looks like it makes sense here. No comments here explaining why, but definitely some voices out there that are with us with all about shuffling the hand of cards. Sweet. Yep. And that brings us to this next question here. Expansions or base game? Expansions or base game? If you had a choice right now to get a brand new game or an expansion for a game that you already own, what would you pick? So that's it. Expansion or base game, Dan?
I would go for base game. I love variety. I love trying new things. I love playing new games, whether they're good, bad, even if they're awful. I love the experience of playing a game for the first time and just analyzing it and things. That's what I enjoy about board games. And maybe if you asked me this question 3 years ago, I would have said expansion. I had my core favorite bunch of games, and more content from my favorite games would have been exactly what I'm looking for. But to be honest, over the time, expansion. I think we mentioned this earlier. Expansions have become less and less appealing for me. I don't know why, because generally when I get more and more expansions, although again it might make the game better, we mentioned the rough end of the side generally makes it longer, and that's normally been a deterrent for me. So for me to pick up an expansion now, it normally takes to be something that I really, really want, and those are few and far between at the moment. So I would go for a new game every day of the week. How about you?
So I'm actually on the other side of this conversation. I think that I would prefer an expansion. Some of my favorite games, I'll pull up Marvel Champions here for an example. They're built around the concept of plug and play nature. I really enjoy the idea that you have this core system and a new expansion doesn't add any extra time. It just adds more options. So things like Marvel Champions, the card game, Arkham Horror, the LCG, Unmatched, all of these games are essentially, when you get an expansion, it's a new deck or it's a new set of cards, and you just add it to whatever you're already playing. It gives you more options, more thematics, more combinations, more possibilities. And it's a blast. I'm loving these. So a lot of the games that have that as their core system, I find are just awesome. Same thing with Ascension Tactics. I'm super excited for that expansion because it's going to be more cards, more variety, more champions, more scenarios. I love it for this system that I'm already enjoying. So very, very excited to see all of this stuff for games that I already know that are good. And that's super awesome. A lot of times when I get new games, it's a gamble on whether the game is worth it. And it's pretty annoying when I have to sell a game that's not very good, that I have completely untested. But when I get an expansion, it's like, oh, sweet, let me make some room for this awesome thing that I know is already good, that I'm going to either use all of it all the time or use bits and pieces that I really enjoy. So really love expansions over base games personally.
No, and I think that your argument will be more popular than mine. I think a big part of mine is, well, I know you do the same thing, is that I need to try new things all the time to keep putting content out there. So it's a big part of the lifeline of my channel, of course, is to keep playing new games. But I think if I was a bit more laid back about the hobby, maybe in 10, 20 years time, I'll probably be on your side of the fence, I'm sure, and just stick with my more familiar things and get more material for what I already know I love. So yeah, I mean, I suppose it depends which way the wind's blowing. One day I'll be with you, one day I'll be with me. But as of now, I'd definitely go for try something new, something completely different.
Gotcha. I think that's where it kind of trips me up a little bit, is a lot of these new games are usually reiterations of something. So it's not really truly amazing unless it's like this brand new unique idea. And so I think that's why I'm a little more frustrated with the brand new base games, because it's kind of like an expansion of something that already exists, the reiteration, and sometimes it's not very good. So when you get these expansions for games that are awesome, then they are bringing new innovative ideas, but in this system that I already enjoy. So
no, you're completely right. But as I said, I'm probably one of the only people actually who I actually really enjoy playing crap games at times, because I'm like, this is new. I tried it. It's a new experience. I didn't like it. Move on.
yeah.
Whereas a lot of people say that's a waste of time. I'd rather have played Brass Birmingham. You know what I mean? So, which I get. After I play so many new things and I go back to one of my old favorites, I'm thinking, why am I playing all these games when I've got these incredible games on my shelves? But hey, that's part of the that's part of what we do, I suppose.
I totally get it. Like it's because we're super excited to find that incredible gem. If we get that, oh, amazing. So cool.
Yeah.
Love
well,
it.
We've already got 200 on our shelves already.
That's true, huh?
Yeah. I know.
So I have some responses to some of our questions. We have Emily responding to Dice or Cards, saying dice so that we can play, blaming poor play on the rolls. Makes sense to me. And then also with our newest questions, base, because expansion just add more rules that I don't want to learn or memorize. That's really funny. Doesn't learning a brand new base game introduce a whole new set of rules you have to learn? Just gonna put that out there, Emily. But I agree with you. It can be annoying when you have to remember all of these little things, and particularly if maybe somebody hasn't played the expansion and you're teaching them a new game, what do you take out? So I can see that side of the expansions as well. Yeah. And then Barker says, "Are you going all in on Wingspan?" I can't decide. The new box is huge. I am going to be going all in on Wingspan. I really like the big storage boxes that Stonemaier Games puts out. I do a bunch of organizings for them to utilize them as best as possible, but I do think that just having that big amount of space is super helpful. It allows you to bring in third-party organizers really well and really speed up the setup of gameplay. And I think that Wingspan needs it because there's like a lot of tiny little tokens, especially if you get upgraded stuff. So I'm excited. The new expansion looks very cool as well. And the next up, Emily says, yes, if it's just new content. I agree, Mackenzie. So a little bit backtracking on the previous comment where it's not adding any new mechanisms or anything, which I think is one of the strongest portions of expansions. Definitely my favorite kind.
I definitely agree with that.
Anything else, Dan, on this topic?
No. What do you think will be the most popular answer?
I think expansions. I think that a lot of people are comfortable in these games that they already know and they already like, and I think that it's going to show up in our polls.
Yeah, I think people. Something that maybe I'm just a bit of a psychopath, but something I've learned over the years is people get really emotionally attached to their favorite games, like really, and the idea of a new thing coming out of their favorite game is like a big deal to them, which is more than understandable, of course. So yeah, I think people love playing their same games over and over and over again, rather than keep trying new stuff, which is again perfectly viable.
Makes sense to me. So that is our this or that section. That brings us to the mechanism appreciation. We talked earlier about specific cards or specific things in games that we found really exciting and fun. This has to do with a mechanism that could be found in a game. It could be an overarching mechanism or just one portion of a larger game. So Dan, what is your first mechanism we're talking about today?
Okay, so the mechanism I'm talking about is from a game that I guarantee that you've not played or heard of. It's a game called Seeland by it's Kramer and Kiesling, actually.
Okay.
And no, sorry, it's not Kiesling. It's Kramer and somebody else. There you go, Kramer and Gunter Burkhardt.
Sure.
But this the mechanism I'm talking about is the money system, the way you manage your currency in the game. Because instead of having, like with most games, collecting coins, whatever, harvesting as much as you want and choosing to spend it when you want. This one, your currency is massively dependent on the position of other people and how much they spend, because you see here on this almost rondel, I suppose, there's only a fixed amount of coins, and the person at the back of those coins has up to a maximum of those steps of coins to spend. So you can see, sorry, I'm colorblind, but this one at the back here, I think it's red, is can spend up to 1, 2, 3, 4 coins to go to end on that first stepping stone, I suppose, of the coins. So they have that four leeway to spend. But as soon as they move forward, the one at the back, any empty coin at the back, will move to the front. So therefore, you could the person here, I think it's the green player, they would then have 2 to spend on their turn rather than just the 1 that they have now. So what this means is that if you're always happy not to spend money, and somebody's already spent loads of money, they're never going to have the option to spend any money. They're always going to be stuck to drafting the tile that they have to draft, which is next on the rondel, rather than having that freedom of skipping over stones. So it's a really interesting thing that you can really punish other players with. If you're content with spending nothing, you can force players to take tiles that they don't want to do. Whereas if you're going gung ho, then you're going to be completely just locked in and not having any leeway at all. Really clever. I've not seen it used before. And it's so simple, and it works. It really works, and adds a nice bit of passive interaction and the way that you can spend things in the game. So yeah, that's I call it capped money, because you can only spend so much depending on the position of other people. But I like it a lot. So that is Seeland.
What a smart mechanism. I love the idea that you are able to just withhold so much by holding strong in that position, but then when you do end up going for it, it gives so many opportunities to others. Oh, that's so good. I really like this.
So I ended up playing this game not so long ago, and whenever it got to my turn, I just so happened never to have to spend money. So like I was always sat on that back coin for like half the game, and everyone else just spend something, Dan, just spend something, because we need to, we need to spend some money ourselves. But yeah, it works pretty well. I like it. What's yours, Mackenzie?
All right, so mine is for the game Ascension Tactics, the miniatures deck building game. I've been playing this a lot, and I've been really enjoying it. This one in particular, though, is the terrain placement of the game. So in Ascension Tactics, you're going to have this large board, and a lot of the scenarios will have you set up all of these little tiles at the beginning, and they're going to change how the game plays. One of the common tiles is a forest. It's trees. It's harder to get into. It blocks line of sight for things. Cool, makes sense. There are some scenarios that have specific terrain, like destroying, like this destroyed ash terrain. And if you start there and move there, you'll take some extra damage, which makes it pretty scary when you're trying to gang up on something with some of your weaker champions. There is one character in particular, though, that I want to talk about, and his name is Root. He is a champion, and you'll see effects like this every so often in the game, and they're some of my favorites. They are ways that you actually can place terrain through attacking or through using special abilities. Some of the bosses even do this. So Root in particular, his effect is when he attacks and kills something. Let me pull up a picture here for you. There you go. So when he attacks and kills something, he is going to be able to place out a grass terrain tile. So this is a champion, and whenever he defeats somebody, he's going to put a forest on the champion's hex. So this in particular is a villain champion, so this would be one of the AI enemies that you're fighting against. And his secondary ability is he's not slowed by forests. So you have this character that essentially has its own mini engine built into it. Every time it takes something out, it creates this new terrain, and it's going to be propelling its own agenda further. And I think this is brilliant. I really like characters that have the ability to change the terrain and the environment, particularly when it comes to tactics and movement. It makes the movement matter that much more. It makes the preparing and planning when you want to take something out. If you have an ability like this on your side, it's really important that you take characters out in specific placements. And then there are some abilities on characters and villains that you face in the cooperative and the solo modes, where they can have these huge area effects where they are permanently changing the landscape of the game. So I really appreciate this, the fact that a single card has so many different implications to whenever it's attacking or being activated, and I think that this does a great job with that terrain placement. So I'm super impressed with the Roots characters, or characters with similar effects in Ascension Tactics.
Yeah, I like that. You can almost, at the end of the game, you can see the path of destruction that he's caused.
Exactly. I love that. It's so cool. You've made this permanent impact, and it tells the story of your whole game. That's so awesome.
Yeah, I like a lot.
It's so good. So smart. The big fan, that is Root from Ascension Tactics, the miniatures deck building game. And this brings us to our next section, the Random Game Challenge. This is where we prophesize the future. We're 2 for 2 in these last two, which
We're
is
pretty good, yeah.
incredible. Generally, the best way to guess for these is to just say something extremely vague. But I think we've been pretty specific these last two. Uno clone and fan expansion of a war game. Dan, what's it going to be this week?
Tanks, yeah, a game about tanks.
That was about tanks.
That was specific. And you even went for a, what was it, a Parcheesi variant or something?
Oh, that's what it was.
And it was exactly that. Yeah. But hey.
Okay, this week I will guess that it is it's going to be. I had it in my head. It's going to be a trivia game of some sort. That's what my guess is going to be.
Okay, that's not a bad shout. I'm going to go. We'll stay on the theme. I'll go for a light dice game. So I'm going to go dice game under 1.5 in weight. There we go.
Under 1.5. Ooh, that might do it for you. Okay, here we are. Random game.
It has to be a dice game though.
Has to be a dice game. Oh my gosh. And the answer is Crystal Miners.
Ooh.
So it is. The weight is. I'm trying to find it. Weight is 2.0. It does look like a dice game. It is a print and play roll and write game from Ryan Lockett. It re-implements Artifact Inc. Came out in 2021. I think I actually know about this game. Do you know this one?
Oh, not at all. No.
So this is actually a game that was published by Ryan Lockett. So they did a Kickstarter a while back called, I think it was called Crafting Arsium or something like that, where it was just a documentary on how he creates his games, the worlds, everything behind it. And this was one of the stretch goals, I believe, or something that you could get for backing it. You could get this print and play of this game. And so that's what this is. I'm pretty sure it's 2021. Ryan Lockett re-implements some of his already games. It is a dice game, but it's not 1.5 or less, unfortunately. So a little bit of recognition on this one though, which is kind of cool. I like the idea that this is actually a game. So let's look at the ratings. Let's see if this actually ended up being something good. 8.2. Okay.
Only 7 ratings though for a Ryan Lockett game.
It is a print and play, so you have to not only go through that extra step of printing it, you had to back that Kickstarter for the documentary, which I was unsure if people actually did. Let's see. Waiting for this to be officially released. Print and play. Made a quite nice one. If Ryan designed it, I love it. I live in Nicaragua, and I'm trying to teach my friends how to play in Spanish. Many of them have never played more than checkers with old bottle caps. Next one, print and play reward from Arsium. I was right. Arsium documentary. Absolutely love it. Very fun dice management placement game with the classic Ryan Lockett point salad scoring. Quick and simple, but full of choices and fun. Sweet.
Yeah. Could be good.
Looks like this was before that big trend of all of the straight to print and play Kickstarter rewards. So this was ahead of the curve by a little bit, which I think is cool. The fact that it is set in the Arsium world is neat.
So what's the Artifacts Inc. then? Was that a more popular, bigger game, like a non-print and play one?
I think it is a non-print and play. Yes, here it is.
Okay, that's okay. That was much more popular. Yeah, 3.2 thousand ratings. Okay.
Yep, looks like it's go on expeditions, find artifacts, trade them in for cards. Cool.
Well, that's good. We got a Ryan Lockett game.
Ha! Emily says Dan was close, but Mackenzie had the trivia knowledge of the game. Agreed.
Yeah, absolutely.
Agreed. Happened to know that this existed. So if any of you watching, or if you're watching later, have played I don't even remember what it's called anymore, Crystal Miners. If any of you have played Crystal Miners, let us know if it's worth checking out, if it's a super solid game, if it does something different in the roll and write genre, or if it's skippable. Love to hear your thoughts on this one, but that's our random game for this section. And now we go to the why is this in your collection? And Dan, I'm going to have you go first here. What game do you have for me? Why is this in your collection?
Okay, this is a game that I've been seeing a lot of actually recently, and there seems to be a ton of different versions of it from my understanding. I don't know what the differences are between them. And I see you own it, and I see you clearly don't like it because you're giving it a pretty poor rating. But this is a game called, I think it's Cartaventure. What's this game all about?
Ew. Ha. Ha, ha, ha.
I don't know what the game is, to be honest. I have no idea what it is about.
Well, let me pull it up for you here. So Cartaventure is not good. I'm just going to put that out there. It's in my collection right now because I haven't sold it. So that is the only reason.
That's the best. That's the best explanation. That's most of my explanations.
Oh
Yeah.
my gosh. It is one of the most disappointing things I've actually played in a long time. So this is it was pitched to me as Seventh Continent Light, where you have this board that's going to be created using cards, but it's all self-contained, which I was really interested in. The idea of Seventh Continent is really, it's okay your first play, the first couple of hours, but once you start repeating everything, it becomes quickly very, very uninteresting. Cartaventura manages to do this in a single session as well, with skill tests that are not very intriguing or exciting, and it's just a very uninteresting game. So the way it works is you're going to start this one in particular. You're going to start off with these different characters that provide you different bonuses. So you have Loki, Tyr, and Thrud, and you can flip them over in order to participate in skill tests that the game provides you. You'll be on this map and you'll be able to flip cards. And when you flip the card, it'll tell you that you need to flip over a specific god in order to do an effect. And so if you do that, a good thing happens, and hopefully you have that character to flip over to satisfy that condition. You're going to be going through the story of, I don't remember who it is. I think it's Eric the Red Sun or something like that. I don't really remember. Honestly, it was not that. Leif Erikson, that's who it is. Leif Erikson.
Oh, yeah.
The story, though, it is interesting. You get to see the history, and I think that was my favorite part of this, is that the story is cool. You get to see all of the different Viking traditions and practices in play, but it does not translate well gameplay-wise. It's all about the chance. Like, did you do this in the right order? Did you do this thing? Do you have this unflipped? And you do this through two distinct sections, and your pieces carry over from those two sections. At the very end of the entire experience, the game basically says, how'd you do? Did you get this ending? If you didn't, you lost. And you can just play the whole thing again, and hopefully you get it right this time. And it's a really dissatisfying taste in your mouth after you finish. So the reason it's in the collection is, frankly, because I haven't sold it yet. It's in the sell pile. I've put out this listing and no one has picked it up. I'm selling it for like, I think like $5 or $2, something like that. So it's super cheap, but nobody wants it. Yeah, I can't recommend this. If anybody has played any of the other Cartaventures games, let me know if they're different than this one in the way they actually play out. I like the history, but I think that if I want to learn about Viking history, I'm going to read the index from A Feast for Odin as opposed to playing this game or a game like this again. So those are my comments on Cartaventure. Any other questions on this one, Dan?
No, that must be somewhat popular because there is quite a few versions, isn't there? I don't know how many there are, but I'm sure there's quite a few.
But that is something that we can check out really quick. So I think the reason there are so many is I think that they made a bunch at once. Very similar to something like the Exit games or the Unlock games. The first time they built them, or they made them, they released like 6 at a time or something like that. Because I know there's one that's set in South America. I know that there's this whole line of them. So let's see if we can look up any of the different ones. Yes, so there are 3, 4, 5, 6 of them. Oh my goodness. So there are 6 of them. So there's Oklahoma, Vinland, Lhasa, Tintagel, and Caravanes. So it looks like there are a variety of different locations that you can explore. So I'm curious if the others follow this similar line of play where it is really just random and it just has you go through it again and again. But for me, this is not one that I'm excited to play again, unfortunately.
No, makes sense. I just wanted to know what it was really because I keep seeing it pop up everywhere. But yeah, it sounds pretty poor.
You got it, Barker. I'm not going to lie to you here. This is not very good. There's no reason to lie on this one. Build a better game, please. Okay. Dan, my question for you is, why is this game I've seen like a million times. I feel like I've played this game, but I don't even remember it. So I'm wondering, why is this in your collection and why is it rated like actually semi-highly? This is the game 6 Nimmt, I believe how you pronounce it. I think I've played this at some point. Maybe they taught me wrong. Maybe it just was a really lackluster experience. But what is this game? Tell me about this.
I love 6 Nimmt. Yeah, 6 Nimmt is a brilliant little card game. So this is there's a big argument whether this game is pure luck or not. I don't think it is, and I think most people who play this game a lot would say it's not. But this is like another golfing style game where you're trying to get as few points as possible.
Okay.
You're choosing a card from a or you dished out 10 cards at the beginning of the game. Every turn, everyone's going to simultaneously select a card. And then in numerical order, starting from lowest to highest, they are going to be allocated next to one of these, I think it's 4 rows. But the number goes next to the closest number below it. So what this means is that sometimes people will be playing cards in a row, and as soon as somebody plays the 6th one, they take all the existing cards in that row, and they have these kind of bull's heads on them, and they are negative points. This game has some of the best simultaneous selections mechanism that I've seen in terms of like, should I go low here? Because if you go really low, sometimes you could take a whole row, which might only have like a bull head or 2 on it. Or should I try and be a bit sneaky and, maybe matey boy over here is going to go 1 below me, so I'll try sneaking after him. Somebody else is going to come after me. But everyone's thinking in the same way. And it's a very hard game to explain, but it's one that if you show people visually, you're like, oh, that makes sense. And after you've played it a round or 2, it just clicks into place. But this game, Mackenzie, is so good. I mean, I don't even know what to say. Like, I think everybody should at least try this one. And after looking at pictures of it, do you think that you've played it or not? Or
I think I've played this. I think it may have been a terrible teach, and I think I don't remember anything about this game.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's an absolute classic. It's an absolute classic by Kramer. Yeah, I think it's brilliant.
Okay. So worth checking out.
Ridiculously light, but it's fantastic.
Okay, so worth checking out is what you're saying on this.
Oh, yeah.
It looks like it's a card game that you could bring anywhere and enjoy with anyone.
Yeah,
I've been trying to find a lot of these styles of games. Like, I've been really enjoying Skulking recently. I went and found that from Grandpa Beck's. Excellent little trick-taking game. Really enjoying that one. So the more people that I can play these games with, the better.
Well, this is perfect for that. It scales really well as well. Like, it gets very chaotic at higher play counts, but that makes it just as fun. And this is a really fun game to teach to players who've not played it before. Like, because it's one of those games where you see that light bulb switch go off in the head, thinking, "Oh, that's cool. That's something different." And I think the best way to play it is just to play 1 round. Yeah, it's pretty random, but I mean, it's a bit more swingy because sometimes the luck might just go against you in 1 round, whereas over 3 rounds it might balance out a bit more. But you can play this in 10 minutes. It's fantastic. It's so good. I've never had a bad game of it, and I've played it about 40, 50 times.
You're hitting all the things I really like. Best way to learn is to play around. It's super quick to play, but also engaging, very simultaneous play. Sounds good. I will definitely take a look at 6
Very, very punchy. One of the only games that my dad really enjoys as well. My dad doesn't play anything, and he really likes this game.
Sweet. Awesome. So glad that we got some positives out of why is this in your collection? This is great. Yeah. Wow, good.
Yeah.
Good
Big
stream.
fan of
good stream. Awesome. This brings us to our last section of the day. This is A to Z. We are all the way on W right now. This is where we talk about a light game that we're interested in, as well as a heavy game that we're interested in the letter of the week. And as I said before, our letter this week is W. If there are any games that you love that are starting with the letter W, please let us know down in the comments, and we'll make sure to feature them here if you're live on the stream with us. So Dan, what's your first game, your light game that starts with the letter W?
Okay, yeah, so my lighter game is a party game called When I Dream. So this is this is such a fun game. It's like a hidden role party game that's it's like word association really. But at the start of the game, you're going to get, I think, well, depending on the player count, you're going to have a number of players who are like these fairies who are trying to help this person with a blindfold on guess what this secret word is. You've got these. I forgot what the bad guys are.
The boogeymen.
Boogeymen who are trying to make the person with the blindfold guess the word incorrectly. And you've got these. I forgot what the other one's called as well. Is it Sandman? Sandman. Yep. Yeah, Sandman. Yeah, the Sandman is trying to keep the pile balanced. So if the fairies are doing really well, they want to start helping the boogeymen. But all the way the game works is that in turn order, well, the person with the blindfold on is not going to know, of course, but then every other player is going to give a clue in a round robin, and it might be like, if the keyword here is sea, the fairy might say ocean, then another fairy might say fish, and then it'll go to the boogeyman, and they'll go, I don't know, they'll say something like
Rice.
Right, yeah, there we go. Or the best clues are something that's kind of linked, but will drag you away from what it's actually supposed to be. So it's because if you're the boogeyman and you're obviously always massively different from the fairies, then you're going to get caught, and people will just start ignoring you. So the best thing to do is just give really slight, silly, cute clues, but linked with the fairies to misdirect the person in the blindfold. And sometimes keeping a straight face in this game is so funny because the word will get so random when it gets to the boogeyman, and everyone just cracks out laughing, and the person with the blindfold on has no idea what's going on, and the clues they're given like are just way out there, and the answers are just so random. It's such a brilliant party game. One of those games you don't really care about the scoring; it's just that ridiculous. But what a good game this is! Brilliant artwork as well, and I like this one a lot.
I'm so glad you talked about this game. I love this game. This game is
Yeah.
incredible. I actually used this game to propose to my wife with. So that's awesome because I wanted to surprise her with something. So this was a way to get her in a blindfold so that she couldn't see. Oh, but you said so many good things about why this game is amazing. That moment when you say the incorrect word as the boogeyman and everyone at the table looks at you and they go, "Are you kidding me?" And then when they get it wrong, it feels even better.
Yeah.
And this is one of those games where you have to perform. If it's your turn, you got to be on it. You are ready. You got to give clues because this cadence is like it's so well done. This game is incredible. Actually, I think this game is really good. Oh, just talking about it makes me want to play this as soon as possible. Oh, I love this one.
It's just as soon as you're the boogeyman and you gain the trust of the person in the blindfold, and all they do is listen to you. That's the best thing because whatever clue you give, they always answer after you. So like, the word could be, ice cream, and you're saying, rubber wheel or something, or like rubber, and they're going, oh, tire. And it's nothing to do with it at all. They only listen to you. And every single time the fairies are looking at you like you absolute, piece of work. It's so good. I love this game. Yeah.
And
Fantastic.
I think it's so interesting because you have a 2-minute timer or something like that. You have such a limited amount of time. So when you're the dreamer, you want to be guessing as much as possible.
Oh,
so
yeah.
You can't just wait and get clues.
No.
So when you make that attachment, it's just even better. Oh, it's so good.
Just out of curiosity, Mackenzie, at the end of the game, the person with the blindfold has this kind of challenge to try and recollect all the correct answers.
Yes.
I think I've only ever had that maybe once, and I've played this game so many times. Maybe we have a really bad memory, but does that normally work for you, or do people always fail on that?
I've seen people get it. I think it depends on how many they guess. So when I play this, I'm guessing questions like this, and when it's my turn, so I like never can recollect just because I've guessed so many times. But there are others where maybe they've guessed like 3 times or 4 times, and of course they're gonna get it because they can string together this theme. It's so challenging, so hard.
There we go.
Oh, great pick! Oh, What I Dream is so good. It's such a good game.
I want to play this game now. Yeah, I haven't played it for a while.
You've got me hyped. Now, going from one party game to another, this is one of my favorite party games, up there with When I Dream, I think. And this is Wits and Wagers Party. So this is Party, Vegas. Who cares what version of this game you're playing? This game is awesome. This is a trivia game where you don't have to be good at trivia. And I love that. The winner of the game is not determined before it starts. So this has you playing a numbers-based trivia game where you're going to have this huge amount of all of these boards, and each board is going to go to a player, and they are going to get a question, and they'll write their answer down on said board. So, for example, say that the question is, how many times have I'm trying to figure something else now. How many steps are in this famous building in Washington, D.C.? And so you are going to have to write down on your board what you think that is, put it face down. You all flip it, and then you get to see what everybody has put down. As you can see in this example, if that was the question, 3 seems pretty low for the number of steps in a big building. And then you get all the way up to 529. So you'll get these bidding chips, and you're going to place them on who you think is closest without going over. And that's the key here, because you can push it. You can place it on a very high number if you think that's it. You can place it super low. You can even put it on the 1 if you think that's the closest without going over, and even receive double out of it. Or you can split your votes onto 2 different ones, or you can double down on yourself if you're feeling pretty confident with your answer, but maybe you're pretending that you know what this thing is to try to fool other people to choose yours. There's a lot of different head games and different spaces that you can do with this. But the fact that you are having this very interesting trivia game where you're playing on other people's knowledge as well as your own, and you're also able to learn pretty interesting stuff as you play, this is one that I'm just having so much fun with continuously. I love the different editions of the game. There is a Vegas one where you have different ways to bet, like you can split your different bets on the different characters, and I really like the system in general. Lots of great choices here when it comes to where you're going to be putting your bids, and just the idea of trying to get close without getting too close is so much fun. You don't have to get it right, you just have to be close enough. So I really like that.
Yeah, outstanding party game. I mean, this is amongst the absolute classics, must own, just utterly brilliant. Yeah, this is like right up there for me amongst my favorite games. It's that good. Yeah, the worst thing in this game, as you said, because it's all done simultaneously. Somebody puts like the kind of 3 down, the next person puts 100 down, and then someone puts like 101 down. So it's like, oh, 2 people have got massive windows, and you've only got like one exact guess that you have to get, and nobody's going to bet on you because it has to be exactly right.
It's the Price is Right effect, where it's like, oh, why would you?
Yeah, it's so good. I mean, it's faultless. This game is absolutely faultless.
Totally agree. Oh, what an incredible game. Which version do you like the most?
I've only got one version. I don't know what the difference is. It's I don't know what it's called. It's it doesn't look like this at all. It's got like a felt mat on it, like a felt sheet, and all the odds are different depending on how.
So I think you have the Vegas version then, which is
Possibly.
great. It's one of the better editions.
Yeah, it doesn't look as cartoony as this one. It looks just, yeah, it's not got any cartoon characters or anything on it.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
so that's a strong recommendation from both of us. Oh, these games have been bangers so far.
Yeah, they have.
When I Dream and Wits and Wagers. Now we go to our heavier games. And Dan, what do you have for me?
Okay, the game I'm talking about is Wallenstein. Another war game, actually. One of the only war games I have with Antike II. This is the other one that I would play. This is a not the prettiest of games, but it has some pretty funky mechanisms. Because the way that the combat is resolved in this game is through the famous cube tower. You're chucking your coloured cubes into the cube tower when you come into a collision with another player, and depending on the cubes that come out, because some of them are going to get caught inside the tower, is going to determine who the winner is. But that's cool in itself. It adds a bit of spark to the game, a bit of spice. But the thing I love most about this game is the programming element of it, where you have a bunch of, well, basically the regions that you control, you gain the cards for them, and you have your player sheet, which will show all the different actions you can take, and you're basically assigning these locations to these actions to show this is what you want to do in these regions. Like some of them might say, maybe muster some troops here, or attack from here, and you ought to be kind of programming things out. But the order in these things are resolved is also super important, because every round there's going to be like a randomization in terms of the order in which these different actions are resolved in. So if you want to attack, you might want to be making sure that you're moving before the attack, but then some of those things are face down, so you're not quite sure in the order they're resolved in, to add a bit of randomness and a bit of ambiguity to that programming. And it's a lot of fun, and I like the idea of you having to gain food and stuff to feed your people, because the bigger the empire you have, you kind of need the infrastructure to support it. But if you keep on rinsing the same places again and again, they can start to kind of rebel against you. It has some pretty cool things here. I think it's aged really well, considering. I would love it to have a bit more of a better graphic design, to be honest. It doesn't look the best, but I think the gameplay is really fun, and has a lot of depth and a lot of kind of wrinkles into how the actions are resolved. And it's been a keeper in my collection. I know you played this one. I don't think you were super keen on it, but
I have not played Wallenstein, but I played Shogun, which is the same game, right?
Essentially, almost identical. Yeah, just the maps in Shogun's a bit longer, I think.
I thought it was fine. I didn't have any big issues with it, but I also wasn't super drawn in to play it again. So
fair enough.
Yeah, it's been a long time. What do you think of the cube tower? Do you like this as a mechanism?
I do. Yeah, I do. It's I think I like it because if it goes bad for you, sooner or later it's going to work for you, because you've invested into that cube tower. Yes, your things are going to get caught in there, and maybe that battle again wasn't in your favor, but on a rainy day down the road, those troops are going to come out of that cube tower and they're going to rescue you, when you least expect it. So I do like that, rather than the pure randomness of the dice, where one person can consistently roll high, you can consistently roll low. It kind of tends to level out as the game goes on, rather than potentially going massively in favor of one player.
I think this is really interesting, just the way that they've approached the cube tower. They've made it so that it's purposely able to hold back cubes. I know in
Yeah.
things like more recent games like Dead Reckoning, for example, the cube tower ensures that everything comes out every time. So I think that's
Really?
interesting that yeah, it's built so that everything shoots out. So I think that's interesting that this game has that as a purposeful inclusion, that something can get held back. So I think that's an interesting take on this, and I think that it totally makes sense where you have invested and it is going to pay out eventually.
Yeah. Yeah, there we go. Wallenstein.
So that is Wallenstein.
And what's your
So
heavy one?
yes. So mine here, there were two games that I wanted to talk about, and one was Wonderland's War, but I feel like I've talked about the game a lot, so I don't want to talk about that anymore because that one it's a good game, excellent game. This one though is one of the best abstract games in comparison to Mythic Mischief and our conversation earlier about some abstract games being ones where you could really get AP and they just really bog down that experience. But I want to talk about War Chest, and War Chest is one of the best abstract games ever, and I think that this is going to. I think it's more of an. I wouldn't even say. I don't know if this was medium weight. How would be the weight on this? You think? What would you say?
I've not played it. I don't know.
What? Okay. So War Chest is fantastic. So it's sitting at 2.31. I don't know if that's light or medium or heavy, but I would say that this is definitely heavier than a party style game. You do have thoughtful decisions. You have a bag building system that you're going to be doing throughout. You're going to be drafting troops at the start of the game. And then based on those troops that you've drafted, you're going to have a collection of different abilities that you'll use when you go into the game. So I think that there's a lot of excellent choices and a lot of different variants in the game that you play based on these units that you get, and seeing how they perform as you play is extremely interesting. So the gameplay itself has you taking these tokens from your bag. You'll have a hand of, I believe it's 3 each round, and on your turn you have some choices. You'll take, I believe it's one action after another, and you'll be either using a coin to place that coin on the map as a troop, putting it face down to recruit a new troop into your bag from your collection in front of you, or discarding a troop from your hand to move a matching troop that's on the board. So for example, if it's my turn and I have a green axes, I can discard that in order to move my berserker and actually do an activation with it. So it's got some really cool not deck building, but bag building choices, because the units that you deploy onto the board, there are now less of them in your bag. The units that you have a bunch of in your bag, you have a single unit that you can activate with all those characters. If you deploy a bunch of the same unit, you have a lot of options when you activate, but less activations. In addition, when a character is killed, it's removed permanently. So losing a unit stinks, and it feels really bad when you do. But because it is a bag builder, you're not sure the consistency at which you're going to pull these different characters. So you can take some really risky plays. You may position yourself into a spot where you could very well die on the next turn, but your opponent has only so many options in their hand. Their chip to actually activate the unit that could kill you could be in their bag still. So you have a lot of great choices and tense choices, because you're thinking to yourself, how can I push this? When is it okay to sacrifice a piece? And there may be a piece that you're okay with sacrificing that doesn't actually get killed because of that luck of the draw. So I really like that the randomness is here, but also the customization and the choice. There's so many great things about War Chest, and it's got the 2-player mode, it's got 2 expansions, it's got a 4-player version, a team-based version. There's a lot to love in this game, and I think that the powers and abilities are super interesting and fun, while also not being super crazy complicated as well, because you're only getting so many of them at a time. So big fan of War Chest. I think this is a amazing game, and I think it might be my favorite abstract if I'm thinking about it. Definitely my favorite competitive abstract.
Yeah, to be honest, out of all of the again pure abstracts, this is one I'd actually really like to try, because as you said, it doesn't sound as like rigid. I don't know what the best way to put it is. Like, I go here, so you're obviously going to do this.
Mm-hmm.
On this one, you've kind of got that potential thinking, I've got a piece here that's going on the absolute warpath, and you've not been able to draw the right tile to stop it. So it kind of creates a bit more. I suppose that could potentially happen, because like if you've got a piece that's you're kind of going for the kill on something, normally you move it 2 spaces, therefore you're in this piece's range, it's going to take you. But this one, you could kind of go for a charge, it can't counteract you, and then you can charge again and take it, if that makes sense. So I like the sound of it, and it definitely feels like this would completely almost destroy all the things I don't like about abstracts and leave the stuff that I do like. So I'm actually really intrigued by this, Mackenzie. Now, I'd quite be willing to try it. Yeah, I'm going to have a look, see how much it is.
I think out of all the games that I talked about here, this would be my strongest recommendation that you haven't played. I think that it is absolutely amazing. One of the best 2-player games. And I think that it maintains that elegance, but it's also super classy. You have these nice, thick poker chips. You have this big bag that you're pulling stuff from. Putting stuff on the board feels good, moving around, using your abilities, trying to push your luck on when you're going to pull stuff and when you're going to push forward. Oh, it's just such a great feeling the entire time you play this game.
And is it just a fight to the death? Who last man standing wins?
So it actually is a control-based game. Your characters are trying to occupy these control point spots and put out these control markers. There's like darker gray areas on the board. And so if you spend an activation and you're on one of those spaces, you can claim it as your own. So you're trying to get a certain amount of those control points out. You can also win by just taking out your opponent's stuff, but I do like that there's that mix of control as well as straight up attrition. So you've got some good choices here.
How long does it take on average per game?
25 minutes, 20 minutes. It's pretty short.
Really? Wow.
There are 2 expansions as well. And I think one of the expansions, I don't think either of them really adds to the game length. One gives you like different scenarios and new pieces, of course. And then the other one gives you abilities to do with this I think it's called like your noble chip, something like that. So there are some good ones. That's nobility. So John Franklin even asks here, he says, what do you think of the expansions, nobility and siege? I have not played a lot of siege. I'll be honest. I've used some of the units in siege. Nobility, though, I have used and I do like. So nobility gives you some more options with this special coin. A lot of the times in the original game, the special coin was just kind of a pass. It was almost like a dead coin that we were always using to buy something with, but this gives you some more options with it. So I think that if you're going to get one, definitely get nobility, but siege definitely has good stuff in it too. If you like war chest, you're going to like the expansions. It's just more units and more setups, going to give you more variance to a game that already has a lot. So big fans of war chest in general, and it does all fit in that core box too, which is really nice.
Yeah, you've sold me, Mackenzie. Sold.
Whew, gotta try this one, Dan. So good, so good.
Yeah.
Oh, and I forgot to mention, there's one other action you can take. It's called bolster. You can take your chip and put it on a chip of the same type on the board to basically give it an extra hit point. And so every time it would die, it removes the top chip instead, so it keeps its position. But that also means that there are less of those chips in your bag to actually activate your bolstered units. Oh, it's so good. You could set up defensively, offensively, go for straight up speed, specialize at a single type of chip. I think you're going to love this one, Dan.
I'm going to try it. Is it expensive? No.
I would say no. It came out about 5 years ago. So 2017 or 2016. No, 2018. 2018 Gen Con. That's when it was out originally. AEG had like these giant bags with it and everything, and it is stuck around. It's one of those games from that Gen Con that was definitely one of the better ones. So awesome.
Okay.
Awesome game.
It's on my radar. It's on my list.
Excellent. So we have a couple of comments here. We have Emily here with her W's for light Whatnot Cabinet and a medium Whistle Mountain. What do you think of these games, Dan? Have you played?
I played Whistle Mountain. Yeah, Whistle Mountain's really interesting worker placement game. Is you're building the board as you go, essentially. Whatnot Cabinet is one I really want to try. Yeah, I think it's a little spatial kind of game. Looks cool. I definitely want to try that one.
I think that I have played both of these games. I think that I prefer other games over Whatnot Cabinet from Steve Finn. But Whistle Mountain I was actually pretty pleased with. This one has a really cool worker space creation mechanism, lots of special abilities and powers, and you are constantly putting out interesting spaces on the board. So some really good spatial stuff going on with Whistle Mountain.
Yeah, it's a good game. Very good game.
And then Barker here says, Warp's Edge is pretty addicting. I always lose, but I'm so close. I was this close to picking Warp's Edge, actually, for my lighter game, but I couldn't snub Wits and Wagers. I had to talk about that one. But Warp's Edge is an excellent deck builder game, Barker. Great choice. And then we have another question from Barker. Are you interested in wormholes? So this is a new AEG pick up and deliver game that's all about using wormholes to reduce the distance between two different spaces. Thoughts on this one, Dan? Is this one you're going to look into?
I would try it. I mean, I generally like pick up and deliver. But yeah, I mean, I suppose the special thing about it is that you can teleport in certain spaces, I suppose. Go in somewhere, come out somewhere else. Is that the unique thing about it?
I believe so, yes.
Yeah. I mean, I'll try it, yeah. 45, 60 minutes. Yeah, sounds good. I don't think I'd buy it because I'm not a huge fan of sci-fi, but yeah, I'm sure it'll be right up my alley, actually. It looks a bit like, what's it called? Oracle of Delphi, which I love.
Does Oracle of Delphi have pick up and deliver in it?
Yeah, that's what it's all about. Yeah,
go figure. I didn't know that.
Yeah,
how about that? Okay, I didn't know that. That's one I still really want to try. Oracle of Delphi.
Oh, I love it. I played it the other day.
My
Absolutely.
list of games with pick up and deliver that I want to play are, first up is Oracle of Delphi. That's like at the top of the list. Second up is Fast Sloths. I really want to try that. And
Good
then
game. I got that. Yeah.
okay. And then third one is, what is it? Maglev Metro. I want to try that one. The
Oh yeah.
upgradable pick up and deliver mechanisms seem very interesting.
Yeah. Cool.
But
Yeah, I'll try this one. Looks cool.
That's kind of where I'm at too. I don't know if I'll buy this one. I still have many games that are in this vein on my list that I want to try, some proven ones. So going to look at those first, of course. But if I get an opportunity, definitely we'll try to play this one.
Yeah, same.
Sweet. So that's our episode. Those are all of the games that we've been excited about and our what we've been playing section, some different mechanisms and cards that we're excited to talk about. We'll wrap up the show with what are we looking forward to playing? What's on your table right now? What have you just taken out of the shrink, Dan? What have you decreased from your shelf of shame?
Well, we spoke just before we started recording. I just played Golem for the first time. So I'm gonna hold back on my thoughts. But one that I'm most looking forward to out of all the games on my shelf of shame at the moment is that I've recently, well, literally last couple of days, I got a copy of Brazil, which is the
snap. Okay.
Yeah, the new
Brazil
4X
Imperial?
Euro. Yeah, looks.
Ooh.
Yeah, can't wait to try this one. I've been wanting this one for years now. I didn't think it was ever going to come out, to be honest, and now it's here. It looks really good. So yeah, hopefully it is good.
That's super exciting. Awesome. So we talked about this early in the show when you brought up Gollum. I've been playing a lot of Lorenzo Il Magnifico, so I've been enjoying that. I'm excited to try out the expansion for that one. But the thing that is on my table right now that I am thrilled about, and I've just finished one of the dreams for, is the expansions for Etherfields have just arrived, and I am so excited. This is one of my favorite solo games, period. And so it's set up on the table, and I'm just going to be playing a lot of it in these upcoming days, and I'm already impressed. I love the different choices that they've made with the new She-Wolf and Harpy campaigns. And so I'm playing the Harpy campaign first, which is one of the smaller campaigns, but they've made some big changes already with the map. And added a bunch of new replacement cards, new replacement map pieces. They've changed the slumber system in the base game, which I really appreciate. You still have slumbers, but they're not as frequent. You're able to get to that map portion a little bit better, but still you get to interact with the world that you've created. And I'm loving it. I'm loving it so far. It's so great to get back out the character that I've had a good time with. You have to shrink down your deck before you start playing the new campaign to make it a little bit more balanced. You have to basically get rid of a bunch of cards that you've purchased, so you're creating a deck with only a certain amount of currency. Because when you upgrade, you buy these new cards for your deck. And so you have a much smaller deck to start off with, which is really exciting because as you play, you're going to get to purchase new ones as well as get the new ones from the new story. So I'm just so excited. There's so many good things about this game, and the scenario design is a lot of fun. And so far, I've played one scenario, and it's been great. And what it has led me to now is something that I'm super, super interested to see what they do with. So loving Etherfields, and I just can't wait to play more. Whew.
Cool. Yeah. Sounds good. And that's still one of the coolest boxes ever.
Oh, yes. And it's still, the whole design of that game is just so much fun. There's so many cool creative things they do here. Barker here says, thanks for the fun stream. Thank you so much for joining us live today, Barker. And Stuffed Fables is your pick. Excellent. I hope you have a great time with it. I haven't played that one from Plaid Hat, but I like the dice system. Seems very interesting. Emily says, Boon Lake, just learned and ready to play. Woo! Super fun. Have a great time with Boon Lake. We're big fans of that here.
Yeah, we are.
And then Brazil as well. Ooh, did you get a copy of Gen Con? Curious about that, Emily. And then John Franklin says, I was given the game Pavlov's House, Stalingrad, World War II. Looking forward to playing it. Big shout out to Priscilla for getting a copy of that. Super exciting here. Oh, have a great time with all your games. And I can't wait to hear your thoughts more on Gollum. I imagine there's going to be a review coming out.
Yep. Sooner or later, we need to play it a time or two more. And then we'll get some thoughts out. Yeah.
Sweet. Any videos you're excited that are dropping very soon?
I've got a couple of reviews coming out for I think our Kalamala coming out. Antike II. I've recorded that one. So yeah, those are my two biggest ones, I suppose. And then I'll be doing my games my board game buy. So the games I bought for the last couple of weeks is going to be coming out tomorrow, probably. How about yourself?
So for me, I think the biggest thing is I have a top 10 things I dislike in board games. So that's coming out very soon. I'm going to gets to talk about some things that I really just dislike. So it's kind of the reasoning behind my really low ratings on a lot of games, and the reason behind a lot of games that I get rid of. So it was really funny. I look really flustered in it.
Are they very specific things, or are we talking about general things?
They're pretty specific, I think. Maybe they are general, but they're pretty specific. Like maybe a specific mechanism or a feeling that I'm given. I think it's more specific than it is general, though.
Okay, cool. Yeah, interested to see that. I had a similar thing semi-recently, actually, but mine were quite generic. But
I really liked your take on the list. You had like 50 or some like ridiculous number. You were just going through them. I loved that. It was so much fun to watch.
But some of them were very petty and minor, so they're not like, yeah.
I loved it. You were like, "This sucks," and then you went on to the next one. It was so good. One of them. That was great. That was a good one. That was a good one.
There we go.
Oh, big fan. And thank you so much for being here. Thank you, Emily. I'm glad you could join us. Thank you so much, John, Barker, everybody who was here in the chat today. And of course, all those spam comments, gotta love them. But thank you so much for being here and for joining Corporate Cardboard. Episode 24 is coming next week. We're going to be changing up potentially some of the things that we're talking about because we are going to be ending A to Z very soon. So we're very excited to see what comes out next. But thank you so much for joining us this week. And SideGame Strong, everybody.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.